Welcome to Brave Inflections. My name is Claudelle von Eck. I'm the founder of Brave Inflections, and thank you very much for visiting the website. I have today with me Cathie Lewis. Really excited about our conversation. Cathie, I was very excited when I discovered you. I just put feelers out there and into the universe. I wanted to have a conversation with a South African around the issues that we're going to be talking about in this video. And thank you very much for agreeing to come and have this conversation with me. But Cathie, before we start, can I just ask you to introduce yourself quickly to the viewers, a little bit of your professional background so we know who you are.
Thank you, Claudelle, and thank you for the invitation. Super happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation. Always wonderful to have conversations with like-minded people. I'm Cathie Lewis, and I'm a lawyer by qualification. I was admitted as an attorney in a conveyancer practice for own account. I started off my career as a lecturer in law and communication. Then, after practicing, I went into the corporate world. And I spent a lot of time in the corporate world, first as a legal manager, then as a group company secretary for listed companies, and got to experience corporate governance, sustainability, all of those good things in real life. And for the last year and a half of my corporate life, I was head of sustainability. And now, excitingly, I have started my own new business, the 1st of September, brand new, Earth Energy. And I specialize in all things governance, ESG, climate change, sustainable development, etc. Also, what I would like to add is a few of my tribe members, that's what I call it, and I formed our cooperative. It's a not-for-profit cooperative, collaborative governance for water security. We call it COGO. Very excited about that as well. And we've started off with a few community projects. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
And what you haven't told my people is that you have 3 masters. 3 masters. I'm very impressed and very intimidated at the same time. Cathie, your focus in recent times has really shifted significantly to sustainability. Now, there seems to me like if one looks at the last number of years, there's a lot of hype around sustainability. And when I with my ear on the ground, you hear different sentiments around sustainability, and some people are asking this question: are we being spooked? Because it seems like it's almost like the same. I'll just draw correlations between where we are with the pandemic at the moment, and some people feeling that there is so much fear being created around it to herd people into a specific direction, right? And I can hear some people also asking the same question around sustainability. Are you using fear to herd us into a very specific ideology? Is it real? I mean, it's the stuff that we should be concerned about, or should I rather say that we've been told that we should be concerned about. Are they real?
Oh, that is such a big question. I mean, we could be spending months and months talking about this. My last master's degree I did at Cambridge in sustainability leadership. So I've been exposed to the most amazing thought leadership internationally ever. And my cohort members, which have now many of them have become friends, are doing really amazing stuff. So from that perspective, it's very real, but it's not spooky and it's not scary. When I think of sustainability, I get excited and I get enthusiastic and I'm like, oh man, this is the best thing ever, because it's a positive thing. Sustainability is all about looking at life from a lot of perspectives. The definition of sustainable development was coined already in 1987 by the Brundtland report, Our Common Future. And what it boils down to is that it's an intergenerational thing. It's about using the resources that we have, both natural and social, to the extent that we don't eat into future generations' use of the resources. So don't take more than the Earth's carrying capacity or the planetary boundaries, which Johan Rockström and his colleagues have described. So it's basically, for me, about respectful, loving, caring living. That's what it is. It's about deeply appreciating and reflecting about what do we have. You know, we live on a finite planet. I wonder sometimes whether people understand it, because then I listen every second, or every company's got like strategies growth, which is great. We all want growth. But have you considered, if you keep on growing on a finite planet, where are you going to grow to? It needs to stop at some stage. You cannot consume more than the earth can provide. But it's not just about the ecological preservation, because a lot of people, you know, they joke with me and they're like, oh, you eco warrior and you bunny hugger and you tree hugger. I'll take all of those. That's fine. You can bring it on. I call myself a sustainabologist in any event. But it's more than that. It's about also the social dimension and, importantly, the prosperity dimension. And I'm using the word prosperity and I'm not using the word profit, because prosperity is so much wider and richer. It's about, it must make financial sense, but not to the extent that you degrade social cohesion and the ecological carrying capacity of the earth. So all in all, it's a very positive, logical, good thing. Doing good business makes a lot of economic sense. So that's how I see sustainability. And a lot of people are cottoning on. Research is now not just 1 or 2 research articles, but it's now ubiquitous that companies who focus on ESG, environment, social, and governance, are now outperforming other companies. And it's there. I mean, you can Google anybody, S&P, Fitch, Solutions, you name them, hard-hitting companies. Look at what Larry Finch, CEO of BlackRock, is saying. It's out there, you know. So it's not a spook, it's not a fairy tale, it's very real.
Sure. So I'm hearing a hell of a lot of different things in what you're saying. I guess when people hear sustainability and they focus on the negatives, and when I say the negatives, it is the earth can't sustain us at the trajectory that we're on now. And well, you sustainability. What did you call yourself? A
sustainabologist, as one does.
Sustainabologist. Okay, that's the first time I've heard that term. The sustainabologist are using things like the earth is going to collapse under us, to try and convince us. But what you're saying is that there's actually very rational logic sense in thinking about sustainability. I want to just zero in on 2 of the things that you said. The one is taking more than what we are giving back, and just thinking about it in terms of the long term. And when you were saying that, what immediately came to mind for me is that as human beings, I have the sense that we've become so, and I suppose it's the culture that we've built over time and having become so much more individualistic, is that our focus is so narrow and so short term that we don't always have the ability to think through how our actions impact on others, never mind the others being 2 or 3 generations away from us.
Exactly.
And if we don't see it, we don't have an emotional connection with it. We don't necessarily think about this thing of this balance of how much we're taking as opposed to how much we're giving back or restoring.
Spot on. And you know, Claudelle, it's not just an intergenerational thing, but it's also a current thing. So I have these conversations, I call them non-believers. Mm-hmm. and they can get quite snarky, and they're like, oh, but we can't afford it, and it's too expensive, and South Africa's got so many unemployed people, and we don't have time for climate change, and this whole COP26 thing, just get real. I am told to get real many times a day. And I'm like, that's cool. So let's just think of a very practical thing, right? So think of China. The level of pollution that people actually plan their day based on the smog level. Would you like to live in a city like that? Japan, everybody knows that Japan is famous for their cherry blossoms. How sad is it that in some instances, because the bees have disappeared, they now employ people to artificially pollinate cherry blossoms? That's expensive. So forget about whether you care about the earth or not, anything. It just doesn't make financial sense anymore. Why would you want to kill insects and bees when they deliver such a fundamental ecosystem service? It just boggles the mind. Another thing is, so I was born in Witbank, eMalahleni, one of the worst polluted areas, and it was a high pollution area declared in any event. And you suffer with sinuses. My kids have all got grommets, the whole thing, right? And I think to myself that we as community are paying the price because of a lack of proper pollution control. Yeah. Why must I pay the price? And I'm paying it in real rands and cents, going to the doctor, being ill, having operations. My husband lost his sense of smell to an extent because of the pollution. Can you believe it? That is a real cost. So why must we pay for it? I also said, when you have these arguments, but you must never lose your sense of humor, right? I did that too many times. So you must just keep it light. But then I say to them, okay. So we were having this conversation about investment and, all these very important decisions. What are you going to do with your pension fund? Where are you going to invest and so on? And I said, will you invest in a company that, argument's sakes, produces coffee and you know that they are using child labor? Will that sit well with you, or will you sleep easy at night, or will you think, oh, company's making a lot of money, I'm going to take it because my yields are good. I don't care about the children in West Africa. Question, rhetorical, that answer.
Yeah.
Will you invest in a company that pollutes the rivers in India, but you have really cool genes coming from that? Will you feel comfortable wearing jeans knowing that you are polluting the rivers and you're killing the ecosystems? Again, rhetorical question. Yeah. These are very real costs to society.
Yeah. And it almost feels like we have become accustomed to this very one-dimensional way of thinking about the world and not integrating all the different components to get to a balanced view. So as long as I am comfortable, I don't focus on the inconvenient truths, because what they're asking of me is that I need to not just change the way I see the world, I need to change my ways.
Exactly. Spot on. Yeah. I mean, it is an inconvenient truth. And sustainability is also, I refer to respect and love, but it's also discipline. Because it is inconvenient to recycle. And you've got to have your little bins and you've got to drive all the way. Because where we now live, we don't have an automatic service like we had when we lived in Durban. It was easy. You put it in the different containers and they collect. Now you've got to take the trouble. But then, then it's a question. What are the choices you are making? Are you comfortable with forgetting about it because it doesn't really suit me? If you go into a shop and you see layers and layers of plastic, it just kills me. So my poor husband knows there's a certain brand of muffins we're not allowed to buy because it's got 3 layers of plastic. Go figure. And I'm like, how does that work? Is no one thinking about this?
Yeah.
So it's these small decisions and actions and options that you are using every day, but also big decisions as to what are the kind of packaging material, what is the vision of the company, how do they treat their people? All of these things, which when you start focusing on this and you become aware of it and you raise your level of critical thinking and critical reflection, you realize there is so much that you can do to make a real difference and contribute in a positive way. And it won't cost you a cent. In fact, you will save money.
I mean, what I'm hearing you say very clearly is that each one of us have a role to play when it comes to sustainability, that it does require of us to critically assess, how am I contributing to the problem and how am I contributing to the solution. The other concept that you touched on earlier on that I really want for you to just expand a little bit is this the contrast between profit and prosperity.
Okay, yeah, that's a lacquer question. So everybody knows about John Elkington's triple bottom line and his People, Profit and Planet. 1994 and 1995, he came out with that. Since then, he's a prolific writer. He's considered to be the grandfather of sustainability. And last year, he brought out his latest book, Green Swans, which I loved. It was great. And it was all about regeneration, etc. So a lot of people are still stuck with a people, planet, profit. And oh, by the way, John Elkington has now said he never meant it in the way that people are using it. It needs to be an integrated approach. And that's another conversation for a whole different day. But what he says in essence is when companies report, financials are reporting only profit, but you should be incorporating your ecological and your social dimensions as well. And you need to consider it from a holistic point of view. That is the true intent of what the triple bottom line is all about. Now we've moved on, and it's exciting, this field, because there's an escalation of note. There's like something in the air. You can feel something is buzzing. We're moving into a new era. And personally, what I like is I really like the new framework that the World Economic Forum has developed in conjunction with the 4 big auditing firms. They released a white paper last year. I think it was August last year. And they call it Stakeholder Capitalism. It's a metrics report. And what they are saying is, let's translate sustainability and sustainable development into ESG. Now, I think people are now becoming more accustomed to ESG, environment, social, and governance. And they added another dimension. And I've always said it should be a quadrant, not a triangle. So what they are saying is, look at the environmental aspects, look at the social aspects, look at good governance principles, and then look at prosperity. And these 4 form a whole. And when you start unpacking what prosperity means, you've got a very strong economic and financial tone to it. It is the basis. I mean, any company which is run for profit needs to make a profit. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And I'm all for it. That's how it should be. But I'm not for pure capitalist notions which excludes other considerations. If you think about it, there are dire consequences if you let the capitalist system run as it runs, because people say, oh, but the market forces will sort it out. Yeah, but now what has happened? Inequality, poverty, climate change, degradation of the ecological systems, indigenous people being, their rights are, let's not even go there. So there must be a way in which you can manage it and bring it back to balance. Just bring it back to center. Just take a deep breath, take a step back and think, am I proud of what I'm doing? Am I chasing money to such an extent that, the consequences are quite severe? And that's where the prosperity comes in. So it's prosperity for the company, but in parallel, it's prosperity for the stakeholders. That's where the whole stakeholder capitalist model comes from. And stakeholders are quite wide. So you start off with your employees always. Then you have your suppliers, so up and down your supply chain. You've got your customers who are always important. You've got governmental institutions, communities, the whole range of that, potential employees, research institutions, etc. Practical example. So now we had COVID, and for me, COVID had two types of companies in broad. You had companies who understood the deeper meaning of life, and you had companies who didn't.
Yeah.
What is the first thing that the companies did who didn't? And again, that's very subjective. You don't have to agree with me. First thing is they laid off their people, or they said no work, no pay.
Yeah.
Others said, oof, okay, this is difficult. Let's be all of this in it together. Let's all take a cut. Let's all come to the party, and let's find a way of riding the storm together. Which company would you want to work for?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what prosperity is all about. Thinking about everybody, you know, raising your gaze and focusing something that's a little bit bigger than just yourself, not having an internal reflection. Surely you want to leave something. You want to leave a legacy that you can look back and you can think, I'm happy and I'm proud to be part of this. Not how much money did I make and how was I able to say to my contractors, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay you, but I sit with a healthy, positive bank balance.
Absolutely.
Right. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's the more and more I listen to you, the more it's just absolutely crystal clear that the business case for sustainability is absolutely sound, right? But then I have this question on my mind. It's like, why is it that sustainability is still so little understood by so many people, and how do we get business leaders to focus more on sustainability?
You really have good questions. I think it's just human nature. Let's go back. Can you remember when email came out? I mean, I can remember I was practicing and we were writing letters. I would dictate and the typist would type and she would print it out, sign it, put it in the post, you know, the whole shebang. And I was like, oh, I'm the person. And then all of a sudden this email came out and I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. But if you think how quickly people cottoned on, and now, even though I still get forms to say, what's your fax number and what's your postal address? I'm like, are you for real? Has anybody got a fax machine still? Or do you still use the postal system? It's just natural progression. It's human development. And I think if you look at spiral dynamics, which I love, or integral theory of Ken Wilber, and you've got the different layers of human development, it's just one of those human development things where your view, your mental models and your worldview has now, can I say, matured or developed to the extent where you consider more perspectives of life and that you are not the central being in your universe and that you realize, oh, there's a world out there. And I think that's what sustainability is. It's the same as when the quality in ISO 9000, everybody was like, oh, what is this? We just need to push tons to the port or sell cars or whatever your business is. We don't care how we do it. For a very long time, I mean, I can remember my father is a metallurgist and they just pushed product and the quality wasn't their main concern. I mean, can you imagine making a product now and you don't have a quality control system in place? You will not even pass go, not collect 200 Rand. And now it's ubiquitous. Now people don't even think about quality and most people have got ISO 9000. It's the same as with IT. IT was considered to be this, what is this? Do we need this? Do we need bots to help us with our accounting and our algorithms? Now everybody's doing it. You don't even need to have a conversation. My personal conspiracy theory, 5 years, 10 years from now, we're not going to have this conversation. You're going to say to me, oh, can you believe we still spoke about this? You won't have a sustainability division because it will be so ingrained and embedded in the business. It will be but of course. How can you not talk about this? How can you not do this? You won't need a champion to drive it because it will just be part of the culture. It's just a developmental thing. It'll come.
You know, and as I'm listening to you, I'm reminded of what I often see in my my coaching practice as well, there's the level of consciousness of individuals, so the first hearing is really I am only focused on self, and I am only really consciously aware of my own internal universe, right? So like a child. Kids are only concerned about their needs. And then you then become aware of other people's needs within your immediate environment, your family members and so forth. And you may start to become concerned about their needs and their well-being. But a real level, or a higher level of consciousness or higher order thinking is when one starts to think integrated about the world. You have an understanding of how you're being impacted upon, but understanding that you are not the center of the universe.
Of the universe. Oh, yeah. Horror. That is true.
Exactly. So like my actions and my inaction has an impact on others around me, and whether I like it or not. Now I'm a thoroughbred introvert, so I love living in my own little space and my own little corner. I call myself the family hermit. But even in this context, one has to have this understanding, whether you like it or not, you are part of a community, you are part of society. You cannot live, you can't exist without having an impact. And it's similarly, organizations need to get to that higher order thinking and understanding, that the organization and its making of profit is not the center of its universe, that it exists in an ecosystem. So maybe just as a last question, Cathie, many would ask this question, and I think a lot of it is, of course, I mean, you talk about what you refer to as your conspiracy theory, is that we will get to a point where it would be like well, we're not even no-brainer. Why are we even having this conversation? And when you said that, I wondered, 100 years from now, the civilization that would exist then, if we still exist, will look back on this generation and what they would say about this generation. But many would ask the question, okay, well, maybe you're kind of making sort of sense. How do we balance the sustainability of the company with sustainability of the of society, of the environment, that you're talking about, the social and environmental sustainability? How do we balance all of that?
Sure, that's a difficult question. I believe in being pragmatic. I've learned that if you are too fanatical, people glaze over and they run away when you approach, and then there's no sense because you can't have a conversation. So it's all about balance, and it's all about finding that sweet spot. And that's why I like sustainability so much. It's about having all the perspectives. I mean, if you think about the King Report and the Integrated Reporting Council's framework, you've got the 6 capitals of value creation. So you look at the human aspects, the intellectual aspects, you look at the ecological aspects, and then you look at the financial aspects, your assets, your money, etc. And you've got to find a way of balancing it. And that's also why I like these frameworks. So if you use international best practice, there are so many phenomenally clever people out there. They've thought about these frameworks. Think about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Think about the Paris Agreement for climate change. I mean, everybody is now buzzing with COP26 now around the corner. And South Africa has now submitted our new national determined contributions, i.e. how we're going to reduce our carbon concentration in the atmosphere. It's happening. Whether you like it or not, it's happening. And you can't live in a cave somewhere. I guess you could, but it's going to be difficult. So you're part of society, and you've got to figure out what is your role as a responsible corporate citizen within society. A lot of stakeholders have got unreasonable expectations. I get that. And you always have to take a level of risk. And if we lived in a perfect world, everybody would comply with everything. But we're not. We don't have wings on our shoulders yet. We live in a very imperfect, challenging, difficult, complex VUCA world. So let's embrace it, accept it, and move on, and find ways in which you can find that sweet spot. So when you approach a problem, practical thing, say you have a new capital application to build something or expand your business or buy a new business or whatever your capital application is. The traditional template is stock standard. You look at the risk, you look at your internal rate of return, you do your financial model, you've got your summary, the whole thing goes to board, etc. I'm saying use the frameworks that you've got. Understand how does that impact both positively and negatively on your human element. Will you create new skills? Will you attract new people? Will you have skills transfer? Will you employ new people? Think about those things and work that in. Think about your environmental impact, both positively and negatively. Because remember, not all impacts are negative. Yeah. You can have a positive impact as well. I mean, next time we can speak about the net positive group, where you've got more, where you put back more in, you put back more than you take out. Then think about your assets. What kind of assets are you investing in? Are these long-term new assets that will contribute, or are these sunset industries which are more harmful than they add benefit? I'm not going to state the obvious about coal mines, right? Look at money. How is a good way of working with your money? Standard Bank, for example, is now the front runner to a large extent, together with Nedbank and a few other banks, and they are developing sustainability bonds, green bonds, social bonds. These are exciting ways in which the financial sector can work smartly with money. So you get you are incentivized with a lower interest rate. So your WACC drops down when you meet certain ESG criteria. Isn't that an obvious thing? Rather use the carrot than the stick. When you know that you're going to be liable for carbon tax, then make a plan and reduce your carbon footprint. You save money. So you see, it's a financial thing. It's a profitability thing and a prosperity thing. And it's so obvious. I don't know why people don't get it, but anyway. So I think you've asked me the question. This is the way in which I would do it. The biggest problem that we are facing and the biggest risk is for sure climate change. There's no doubt about it. It's a scary thought, and I get anxious when I, dive into the scientific information. The IPCC released their recent report, and it's a scary thought. If you just take the time to read what it means to live in a 2-degree world, let alone a 3-degree or a 4-degree world. By the way, the insurance industry and a lot of other industries will not survive in a 3-degree world. So now it means you've got to make a plan. It comes back to finances. So, if you don't take this seriously, you will simply not exist anymore. And it's not because you like the earth or not. It's just a fact. You won't have a business. Yeah. I hope I answered your question.
No, it does. And once again, you're encouraging us to apply our minds and to think critically about, I suppose, boils down to, once again, how are you contributing, positively or negatively? But I think the biggest thing, takeaway from just having listened to you, Cathie, today is that none of us have the luxury to think that this does not affect us and that we don't have something to do. We all have some action that we need to take. The question is whether we are applying our minds to what that is and whether we're actually doing what we should be doing in the interest of humanity. And it's the collective. It's about us all together collectively, but also about what we're going to leave behind for the generations to come. Cathie, I thank you so much for being so generous with your insights. I do hope that our conversation would at least, at the very, very least, would have planted some seeds in people's minds, those who have not really started to think about sustainability deeply in terms of how they are contributing to the solution for us as humanity and the earth. And that especially those who are in leadership positions would take back to their organizations the conversations and start the conversations and to challenge. And those who may not be in influential leadership positions, that they would see their agency as citizens in society, and that they would drive for change, push the politicians, push the leaders within their organizations as customers, demand more from those that we buy from, so that we can change our ways, so that we can make sure that we have a sustainable future. Cathie, thank you so much. And those of you watching the video, thank you very much for watching this video. This is the first conversation of 2. I do encourage you that once you have listened to this video, that you go and have a listen to the other one as well. Go and have a look at the rest of the website. There are loads of information. I've interviewed a few different people that you may want to go and listen to. And if you subscribe to the website, we will notify you every time I add something new to the website. Let me know if you think that there's any topic that you think I should tackle. And if I can, I certainly will. Once again, thank you very much, Cathie. I should say Cathie. I keep on saying Cathie, so it's a Cathie. I really appreciate your time with me.